So, you join me on a sunny and warm Sunday, the first in a very, very long time, and I popped out to do the oil change on the Acclaim. The first work I've done to it in quite a while. It's just sort of been daily driving. Over winter, haven't really had decent weather or time to do anything. Of course, with the new this coronavirus thing, it might be the case that once I do this oil change, the car might not be going anywhere for a while, depending on whether or not I still have to go to work. At the moment, I still do, but as of tomorrow, that could all change. Sort of trying to keep out the way as best as possible. Thankfully, to do work on the car, I can be isolated from other people by the medium of being underneath the car. So we'll get that done. Odometer is reading 82,043 miles and a half. So that's mostly for my own records more than anything, so I know when to do the next oil change. It's currently running up to temperature, and then I'll drop the oil, new filter, new oil in. Did the plugs probably about 1,000 miles ago, so I'm not going to re-gap those again. Might pop off the valve cover and check the valve clearances, because it's a little bit rattly, tappety, but I've also got a bit of a blow on the exhaust, so it's kind of difficult to tell what is what. But yeah, that's today's plan. And then maybe look at the rear wheel arches if I can be arsed, or if I can find my paint. Not running terribly smoothly. I think I'm having some problems with the carburetors, which will need future investigating. And I'm also leaking water from the top of the radiator, which is nice. Might have to have that recored, but for now it's just a case of monitoring and making sure that I don't overheat the bugger. Go, secure. Yeah, it looks like lovely stuff, doesn't it? Lovely. So, while I was down there tightening up the sump plug, I made a hole. And here I was thinking that I'd be able to get through the next MOT without any more bloody welding. Essentially, that drain hole had become blocked, and it's gone all horrible and crusty, which is Marvellous. Love it. Right, tray repositioned to try and catch any drips. Let's see how easily this oil filter comes off. I'm hoping it'll be hand tight, because I only put it on hand tight. There's no need to do them up to the absolute gunnels. There we go. Always try not to drop the oil filter in the tub of oil. We've all done it. It's an unpleasant experience. Not recommended. One interesting thing I've just noticed is that the new oil filter is completely different to the one that just came off, which is always a good sign. I'm hoping that the internal diameter is the same as the old one, and that it isn't just entirely wrong. It screws on. It's a very different design to the other one, but the diameter of the rubber ring and everything seems the same. It just seems to be that rather than be sort of tall and narrow, that one is sort of more stubby. Well, we'll put oil in it, and if it all pisses back out or the engine explodes, we'll know it's wrong. So this is the box for the oil filter I just fitted, if it'll focus. It's an old stock Unipart, GFE 192, which, having a look online, does seem to fit some Rovers, some Triumphs and some Hondas, which is a good sign. But I have noticed that it does just have a question mark written on it, on the box, which is always a good sign, but you know, fingers crossed. Right, so oil in time. My oil of choice is Tesco's Finest Cheapest 50 weight 40, on the basis that it was reduced massively when I bought it, and I bought an absolute load of it in bulk, which is quite important for people like me who have no money. Now, the handbook says it should take, including the oil filter, 4 litres from dry, so put in about 3.5, I think, and then check the dipstick, maybe run it a second to circulate it about, and then double check, etc, etc, because I always find that in cars this age the sump tends to be a wee bit sludged up and they don't quite take full capacity. Lovely, lovely oil. Quick check to make sure it's not like pissing out the bottom anywhere, which it appears not to be. We'll put in half of the next one. Never has such a simple task been done with such incompetence. That'll do for now. Well, I've actually dropped the car on one side, so it should be sitting vaguely straight. Because my street is bowed quite heavily towards the edges, unless you park the car right in the middle of the road, it's never on flat ground. And that looks to be plenty, which is a little bit worrying because we've got a litre spare. Right, now it's time for the best bit, which is to try and get the oil that I've just emptied out into this unsteady container. That's that container now full. And the rest of it I can't really do anything with because that's still got good oil in it. I may have an old oil can in the back of the Triumph. The other Triumph, that is. Yeah. Here we go. Good oil. Now, as a final aside, some of you may be wondering, how is it that the book says the car takes 4 litres of oil? About 2.5, no, say 3 and a bit went in, and probably about 1 and a bit, no, 2 and a bit came out. Absolutely no idea, life's too short to be worrying about things like that. Next thing to do is see if we can splash some rust stopper stuff on these arches. So I've actually got something left to work with by the time summer rolls around. Alright, so now having sanded the loose rust off, I'm just going to go nuts with Vactan, because the car looks like shit anyway, so... Right, so that's quite a liberal amount of rust converter applied and dried. Now to attack it with rattle cans. So rattle cans have been deployed and it looks pretty bad, but hopefully it will at least keep the rust from blooming for I don't know, another few months with any luck. If I get through 2 or 3 months out of it, I'll be happy, and it looks, you know, presentable enough from 100 yards, so I say 100 yards, I'm still about 5 feet away if that. Haven't bothered doing this wing because this wing I've got a replacement for, and it's all made out of tape and rust. It's just junk. It's irreparable, I think, sadly. But yeah, quite a lot of metal in these arches actually. It seems that the chap who repaired them with fiberglass, I get the feeling that if he had not repaired them with fiberglass, there'd be quite a lot less rust, but oh well. So here is my new old stock Triumph Acclaim front driver's side wing, bought from Rimmer Brothers, and was the last one they had. So this will be going on the car at some point. So some of you may remember that I had a Triumph Dolomite, and indeed I still do. However, the project stalled a bit. It has now been off the road for something like a year and 3-4 months or something, because it blew up its engine. So it's kind of been relegated to storage currently, which is rather undignified. However, progress is afoot. So I'll flip the camera around and show you inside the engine bay. Yes, this is looking rather bare, isn't it? That's looking fairly horrible, isn't it? Yes. It's maybe a little bit rustier than it was when I first took it apart in the bores, but it is essentially still the same as it. The amount of detritus floating about in it is exactly the same. The problem has been identified. You'll notice that there's quite a lot of movement on, I think, number 2 or 3, I can't remember, but anyway, one of them has lost a big end bearing and it's just shagged, basically. However, not particularly fussed, because you may notice that the car is a little bit on its arse, and that is because I have this newly rebuilt pre-rationalisation 1.3 litre Triumph engine, all covered in WD-40 so it doesn't go rusty. And you may be wondering, why didn't you film building this? And it's because I didn't build it, I got a man to build it for me, because the logistics of trying to do a full engine rebuild when you have absolutely no facilities, it just didn't work. I couldn't do it. So a friend of mine very kindly built this unit for the cost of parts only, which is incredibly generous of him, and we'll hopefully see this car back on the road in the summer, depending on how the whole, deadly virus thing pans out. Other things. Yes, you may remember the wheel arch of doom. Well, I have managed to acquire, if I can open this door, this is a wheel arch repair panel that came off that was knackered. This is, shiny new wheel arch repair panel. Very nice. So that is for that side. This side, also shagged, but I'm not going to touch that until I've got panels to sort it. So yes, it's not the end of Project Dolomite. It's just taking a little bit longer than expected. So I also have this engine hiding in the bedroom of my one bed flat, because that's just how I roll. This is a Mark IV Triumph Spitfire engine, also 1.3, which was kindly donated to me, and it was kind of working out what I was going to do between the engines that I had and deciding which one that was actually going to use that has caused the delay in the project. This was sort of bought in an unknown condition other than it turned over, and the hope was that it would be half decent and I'd be able to basically just drop it in the car as a short-term measure to keep it running and driving. However, this is basically an engine that is also in full rebuild territory, as the big end and main bearings are knackered in it. So this one will be going into storage one day when I actually have somewhere to store stuff, which will probably be never. So if we look in this cupboard in the hallway, yes, these were the big end bearings from that Spitfire engine, which are not terribly healthy, apart from those two, which are bizarrely quite a lot nicer than the other ones. These ones are A, very worn, and B, there's a lot of scoring to them, and there's also a lot of scoring to the actual surfaces on the crank itself. So when that engine goes back together, it will have to have a crank regrind and associated new bearings, which is why I am not rebuilding that particular unit just yet, while I have a small bearing pre-rationalisation engine to use. Well, that was something.
Try again.
Run over.
Realistically, not even great. Not even the first scan will take that long.
How far forward?
What's the scenic as you can get? Perfect. Well, that brought back some memories.
Good car this, back in the day.